Yeah, so as mentioned, I will be talking about open source, specifically how to build your own Python library. I mean, it doesn't, some things will apply not only to Python, most of the things actually. So basically tips and tricks which are learned when doing so. And let me just start with a little bit of my story. I created a library called TreeData. I'm not sure if any one of you knows TreeData, maybe does. Oh, there's 2-3 people, great. So the library is basically data quality library detecting some problems in companies' data, mostly written as a dbt package. dbt is a tool for data transformations, quite popular in the data world. This was the main part of the library. Like we had also the Python package, a smaller part. We got quite decent tractions. We have hundreds of companies actually using this and detecting some problems, also the big companies. In the end, we actually didn't manage to monetize it as a business, so I'm actually back to normal work now. But basically, it was some kind of success in terms of the open source adoption. And as mentioned, library was mostly dbt, SQL, Jinja code, not Python. So most of the things I will be talking about will be generally about open source, not specifically Python. But some, I think, will be more detailed to that. Anything else here? Probably not. Okay, so the first thing when you actually want to start on your own project is to find some idea which you think would be good to work on. And I have some couple points which can possibly help you create these ideas and validate them. So the first thing, which is like the most popular thing you can actually do, is you can solve your own problems. So you have some own problems in your own life. You think that it would be good to have some software to actually help you solving that. So this is probably a good candidate for the library, like for any open source project. Yeah, you see it in your work, you see it in daily life, etc. The second thing is that, okay, this may happen, but maybe there are already some tools in the space. Like overall, there's a lot of companies doing products, a lot of open source. So for example, for eData, I knew that there was this kind of data observability movement when everybody wanted to detect what's going on in their pipelines, detect problems in the data, etc. And there were some early adopters in this space, some companies doing SaaS business. And I knew that these companies, I noticed them, had this one issue that they were not open source. So basically, for them to help you, you needed to send all the data to them. Maybe not all, but at least some metrics about your data. And for a lot of the companies, this is kind of a no-go because like they don't want to do it. So I know that like in the world, there is a space when I can actually get in and get some proper traction with people who actually don't want to send this data. Yeah, so that was kind of the thing that, okay, I noticed some issue in the current market that there is a gap, like there is something which is actually missing. There are people who are actually want to use this kind of tools, but they cannot. So I just went in and created the library for that. So that's one, and a lot of the tools are like that, like some kind of gap in what's currently available. The first thing which I have here is, I'm not sure how many of you know YC. Probably a lot of people know YC. Just 2, 3, 4, no, that's not so many, okay. YC is a very known accelerator in the US for startups, funding many basically teams to work on projects. And they publish this kind of blog post about ideas for businesses, for projects to work on. Yeah, so they do it actually yearly. Oh fuck, I know I need to go there. You can actually read, I think this is quite good information in terms of like knowing what's in the industry. And, no, that's not this. I knew there would be a problem. And getting ideas of what are the good problems to work on. So that's the third thing. Now, like another thing is that you can look in the world and see what people are actually frustrated about. Maybe not necessarily always you, but usually when you go to blogs, Slack channels, things like that. There are people who will complain about stuff. And this is very useful when you see people complaining, especially if there's many people complaining. So you can go there, see what things are they specifically complain on, and try to find a solution for that. And get the idea what thing you can actually write to solve it. And the last thing which I have here is you can ask LLM to generate you ideas for the open source project. It's pretty good with that actually, but you need to go deeper, meaning ask other questions, not just how to get the ideas, go deeper into like what you can do. Okay, so I think that's the first step, getting the idea. And now when you have the idea, there's this important part of picking the name for your project, for your open source startup, etc. And probably most of you are using pypi to install packages on Python. And if you have some name for your project, you probably should check if I will be speaking specifically about Python here, if it's already taken. Yeah, so this works pretty much the same way as you would want to buy some domain and check if it's free. You can do it yourself here. I actually did this for Redata. The name was free, but like it was a little bit cumbersome to actually publish the package. I didn't know how to do it. So I didn't do it for like 2-3 months. I went back, and the kind of sad thing was that somebody already had the same idea and took my name. So it happens, and probably if you have the good name, have some project, you can, I advise you to pretty much reserve it. And that's why very simple introduction on how to actually push stuff to PyPy. It's quite simple. I mean, there are also libraries which you can help you do that. You need to create an account. There are two actually sites. One is pypi.org and another is the test site. Test site is mostly like for your internal testing if the things will work. When you create a normal account, you basically create the API tokens. Then you can create a proper Python package. You can use tools like Poetry, obviously, or other stuff to generate a proper Python structure. I very much advise to use GitHub Actions for CI/CD, specifically for publishing a Python package. We, for example, wrote GitHub Actions specifically for that. What it's good with is that you don't need to do all the publishing stuff locally. When you have your repo, you can do just, you can set it up in the way that basically it publishes everything when you do the GitHub release. GitHub releases you do here. You create basically a new tag in your repo, and GitHub action which you will have set up. If you just copy this, it will actually work. Just you need to pass the proper. Sure, go.
From around out here, there is no need to use token.
Yeah, OIDC.
Yeah.
It's much safer to not use it.
Yep.
There's something called trusted publishers.
Mm-hmm.
Because when someone has token, he could delete package and do many strange things. With trusted publishers, it's only possible to publish.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't set it up, but yeah, like you can like if you want to publish only like with GitHub Actions and other like trusted publishers, yeah, you can also do it without the token. So that's definitely a good remark. But yeah, pretty much this. So set up a GitHub action. If you actually want to do the way the colleague suggested, you need to set up it in your PyPy account, like this trusted integration, basically. So that's what you do there. But yeah, and usually what you do is pretty much you publish the package specifically when you create a new release tag. And you usually you publish to test every time you actually push. Just this is mostly for testing. So that's this. And let me return back to my presentation. Okay, so you have that, and I think that's pretty much all you need to do to reserve the name. So definitely if you have some, I encourage you to do it. And just one advice, like kind of warnings here, like PyPy is I mean, it's pretty much write only. You can delete stuff, but you cannot republish the same release the same stuff again. So you should be pretty. I mean, you shouldn't push things which may have high probability of not working. You should probably do like alpha, beta, etc. releases. And another thing is that if you have any non-Python files in your package, probably you need to set it up and tell your build system to actually include those when publishing to PyPy. So that's pretty much this. And now one more thing about publishing is that you need to choose like some version for your package. And probably many of you heard something about semantic versioning. Most packages have these three numbers: major, minor, and patch. Patch is pretty much, and these three numbers usually change for specific releases. Patch is for small updates to your code, bug fixes mostly. Minor is for bigger features, but features which actually keep backward compatibility. And major is for actually breaking changes. So that's the three versions you have. And now the question is, what's actually the first number you should pick? Most likely 0.1.0 as a thing. Why 0 on the start? Mostly because when you have 0 on the start, you actually can do breaking changes with minor releases. That's the reason actually a lot of the packages which you are using stay with this 0 version for a long, long time. For example, DBT stayed with it for a couple of years. And it took them to probably like huge amounts of funding when they actually started release point 1.0, because they wanted this flexibility of doing the breaking changes in every release or every minor release. Okay, so now assuming you actually do that, and you push this package to your to PyPy, it's actually live, or is it like any other open source library? The question is how to make people actually use it. So would it be people actually playing with it? And I was doing mostly like 4 things. Probably there are some other stuff which you can do, but I'll just describe what I tried and actually what worked here. So the first thing is, you can obviously write on your LinkedIn that you wrote this great package, and all your, let's say, friends can go there. But this is just one time, and it probably will not work that well. So for LinkedIn, it's generally quite much acceptable to message people, and like pretty much just add them to the contacts with the link to your repo, saying that please check it out. And if you have a proper audience, if you pick the proper group of people to which you actually addresses, then usually, at least that's in my experience, you will get quite positive responses from many people. They will be saying, "Yay, that's amazing," etc., etc., and very little like bad responses, meaning saying no or being not happy that you contacted them. So if you pick the right group, and also I will tell you a little bit how to actually pick this group and message this group of people, definitely good tool to pretty much get some people interested, get the feedback if what you wrote on is actually like making sense for them, and get some initial traction. Okay, the other thing is it's more of a release-based thing, is that you can go to Reddit. Reddit has many subreddits specifically for any programming language, data engineering, etc., etc. So you can do a couple launches of your product there. People are usually like accustomed to that. They give you feedback. Like you can also see if the launch is causing the comments on Reddit. You will get usually quite a big amount of stars when some things actually start to be popular and people like it. So definitely, I would advise like do a couple of these launches and see how they fly. The third thing you can do, it's more of a Slack, Discord thing. A lot of the open source currently have pretty much some channel when authors speak with the users. Like also definitely if you think about the bigger project, I advise to like create this kind of channel. But the best thing to promote is actually go to others' channels, see specific people problems there. Maybe they, for example, in my case, they were talking about data tests, they were talking about data quality or any keywords. You can find that they are actually asking the questions, and you can respond there. And actually it stays on the Slack Discord for a long time, so when people will search it, they will find it. So it's definitely useful. A lot of people have this strategy. They respond to any question asked about some stuff. So you also set up usually as a like your nickname as a redata founder, etc., etc. So that pretty much works quite well. And the last thing people do is the like big kind of Hacker News launch. When you put your link there, you tell all your friends that you're launching on Hacker News to like it, and you hope that you will get to the main page. So that's the last thing you usually do.
This is against the rules.
I know. And they kind of detect it, but people still do it. And so it doesn't help too much. It helps a little bit, probably. Okay, and now a bit of like the marketing tools which you can use to help with that. So for LinkedIn and GitHub, etc., if you want to, sometimes you want to automate some stuff. For example, to get message people like once every week, or get people who actually start specific repository, etc. There are tools like that. It's kind of red. Like these tools are a little bit of shady, a little bit. But you can use some of them. I think they're okay. For the other part, you can also do obviously emails. I don't recommend it too much. I haven't done it. I mean, I started, but like then you can get a little bit more negative responses for some people because they will be surprised that they are getting some emails. So yeah, LinkedIn great, email for open source specifically not so much. And for like managing all of that, usually you need some Python scripts, etc., to process all this data, have a mini pipeline. I very much advise to use GitHub Actions for this kind of data processing. You don't need even Airflow, things like that. GitHub Actions work quite well for these simple pipelines. So yeah, that's pretty much this. Okay, now assuming that you kind of launched the project, promoted it a little bit, and with open source, there is this funny thing that you don't actually know who is using it, because like everybody can download it. You don't see in your any database if the people are using it. So you need some ways to actually understand, is it actually popular, people like it or not. So I'll just go through some of the stats you can get from internet about your project. So the first thing is start history page. So GitHub has this thing that you can start the repo, yeah? And people actually look at that quite much because they want to know if the repo is actually like can be trusted or cannot be trusted. Yeah, like if it's like 5 people just liking this repo, probably they will not trust it so much, at least most of the people. So you can track it online, like there's the page for that, starthistory.com. When for every repo you can check like how your traction look like. Are you getting new people interested in that or not? So definitely recommend checking it. You can kind of make it better. Like definitely you shouldn't anyhow buy the stars or do things like that, but you can contact people who like starting the repos or things in this time. So proper targeting, let's say. So that's one thing, and that's one thing to judge your like open source project traction. The other thing, PyPy has this pretty much the stats on number of downloads you are getting daily. This number will be usually quite huge, like much bigger than, I mean, now it's like usually bigger than the number of users. Some users can generate like hundreds of downloads per day because they have some automatic scripts set up, etc., which use your tools. I don't know, they run it on hundreds of servers, things like that, but you will still see like more or less the traction you're getting, like are any people actually using it or not? Yeah, so you'll see if this, for most of the project, this is pretty much flat, or there are some like 10 downloads per day from the like the other websites which show the packages. The first thing you can check for the metrics about your open source. This is just normally visible on GitHub when you have the account. And the project is kind of insights about the traffic. You can see all the, like, how many people visit the repo daily. You can see from actually where they are coming from, the web pages, so kind of mini version of the Google Analytics. I think it's quite useful also to check this out and basically see the traction there. Okay, and the last thing, also in red a bit. So a lot of the open source, commercial, let's say open source projects, what they do, they actually track you in some way. So they have a scripts which know that you're running this command and they add it to their database. So they know like exactly the number of users. Like it's still obviously, if you are doing it yourself, you need to allow users to disable it because they won't be happy. Usually there will be people who will install it behind the company VPN and it will fail at some point and they will ask you about this strange error that something cannot connect to the web page. So definitely you need to kind of allow disabling that. But generally most of the like Apache things don't do this, but like things like DBT, more commercial style projects which are open source usually do it. So they track the users and they just allow you to disable it. There are some tools which help you set this up, segments, Snowplow and RudderStack, for example. Some of those are actually paid tools. Some of RudderStack, for example, is an open source project, so you don't need to pay anything for that. That's this. Okay, so now probably assuming that you have some traction, you probably should be still talking to the user. So on GitHub, you'll most likely start getting some issues, some people asking questions maybe on Slack. But what they do usually is ask when something specifically don't work. So like bugs, things like integrations they want to add, etc. So it's hard to know exactly how they're using the tool, like they're super happy or not, how big of the parts in the company, let's say pipeline it is. Yeah, so you need to actually speak to them to understand that. And like on the start, setting up calls may be a little bit strange, and maybe you'll not get so much responses, but definitely like people who will like your tool definitely will speak to you. So like that's one of the best like kind of signs that people use it and people want to speak to you about it. There are some tools to automate it. You can use the ones which I mentioned for marketing, and there are some also tools to automate setting up the calls with people. Probably a lot of you know Calendly. I'm not sure how many you know Calendly. Yeah, most of you. Cal.com is kind of a, let's say, newer, I think cheaper version of this. Probably worth, if you start paying for Calendly, probably you can switch to Cal.com. Just one of the kind of alternatives which is doing quite good. Okay, and now assuming that you actually set this up, what actually to do on the interview. So most things you want to know is like the people emotions, like what they are frustrated about, what they are kind of lacking, but not in terms of integration, like, I don't know, they're frustrated about lack of dashboard, etc. And you also ask specifically about facts and past. That's the most important thing, like what they actually do with it, yeah, because they will have a lot of ideas what you can add to your repo, and I mean that's definitely fine to have ideas, but and you should know them too, but you are actually the one building the product, and you need to decide. Like a lot of these ideas would not make sense. You shouldn't definitely treat this as a kind of the to-do list from the users. But yeah, like definitely very close attention to what people are actually not liking and what frustrates them. And speaking about this, YC also has a pretty good course about how to run the interviews with people. Like this applies to startup, but the same thing you can do actually for your open source. So like if you have time, I would encourage to check it out. Okay, I think two more things. One is documentation. For open source, actually documentation is a huge part of actually the product, because that's the first thing people start kind of using it. Like they need to understand how it works, and this what their experience kind of is based on. There are some tools which allow you to make, because obviously you can keep the README from GitHub, and it looks kind of okay, but usually that's not enough, and you don't want to have a huge README page with a lot of stuff. You want something which looks better. For data community specifically, a lot of people use Docusaurus. This is an open source tool for generating documentation from Facebook. There are some paid tools, for example, Mintlify. I actually like design of this tool better, but yeah, you can choose. And most often what you want to do is basically whenever you do the release, you have a GitHub action. Also, you can check it out here. That's pretty much my action for redata. You create a new documentation version and show it to the users. So that's pretty much this. And the last thing is demo. Probably actually the most important thing to communicate what your project is doing. If it's possible to create a demo, like graphical, if your project has some kind of UI, that's obviously great. If it doesn't have any UI, you can create a recording, or you can just show exactly what commands to run and what is the output. Like it needs to be very visible, like how to get the value out of the tool, like probably in the first 30 seconds or a minute when somebody enters the page. Yeah, so that's one thing to remember. Usually people don't spend too much time on the random project from the internet. So I think that's all. Any questions, etc.?
Did you consider using GitLab or Bitbucket instead of GitHub as a repo?
Not. I think almost all. I mean, apart from GitLab, obviously, it's open source, which is not on. It's only on GitLab, but it's like you just get more people, for example, starting the repo on GitHub. You also have people who are just checking the repos in GitHub, so there will be just more people visiting this, and I think it's just that's the much easier way to actually get some traction. Yeah, so mostly this is the only thing I considered because just more people have GitHub accounts than GitLab accounts. Yeah. So
I just wanted to clarify one thing. Is you said to reserve a name of a package. And I wanted to bring up PEP 721. If I remember correctly, you must have already some functionality related to it. Just to clear up the tension. If you want to reserve a name, you already need to have something. Otherwise, it's name squatting. Right?
Yeah, that's true. You shouldn't push the empty package.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you should. I haven't. I haven't. I pushed it like 3 months too late, so I'm not the one squatting the names, but yeah.
And if someone is name squatting, you can actually open a ticket in pypi-support, /support repo. And there's a person full-time answering those tickets. I know because I remember when the person was recruited, and I was the first one interviewed. Yeah.
I agree with all of it, obviously. And I haven't, yeah, as you know. Okay, there are some other people. Okay, you were. Okay.
And you said about the ways to attract the audience. So can you suggest how to find the audience for the open source project?
how to find the audience. So I mean, one thing is users of existing tools. So for example, Airflow, you go with some big tools which are popular, and this is a big audience. Yeah, like they all have this, for example.
Okay,
Yeah.
and if I have an open source project,
Mhm.
how do I announce to the project the news about the project that we created?
How do you announce to this community?
Yeah. And how to search for the community and how to search for the people that are willing to they are okay with some messages.
Yeah, so I mean, we still record? No, joking. So basically, what you can you can do a couple of things. Like one thing, there's Slack. Like a lot of this project has Slack channels, and there are people there. You shouldn't just like get the list of all the people there, but you can message, for example, on some public channels there. Yeah, so you can like there are usually some specific channels for promotion. And as I mentioned, you can specifically answer the like any comments, questions these people have. Yeah, so you can even, let's say, somebody is asking questions which is kind of similar to what you're working on, so you can answer this. Yeah, and if you set this up as your like a project as a main thing as your nickname, you will also see it. But you can like if it actually makes sense to mention it, then definitely mention it. Yeah, like in the response to the question. Or is it actually like some people ask about what are the tools? Yeah, like and you can always add your tool there. Yeah, so that's one thing. You can also get, for example, people starting the repos. You can do some matching to get those contacts on LinkedIn, things like that, and it actually works. You can contact them because you just ask about introduce yourself and show your repo, like in the message. So people also do that. I mean, a lot of this kind of tricks, yeah, basically.
Okay, so the Slack and LinkedIn actually is the way.
Yeah, Slack, LinkedIn, probably, yeah, most often those. Yeah, I mean, like for contacting specific person, yeah, because on Hacker News Reddit, obviously you do lunches, more like lunches, and then if somebody is responding, you can also obviously usually talk with those people too.
Thank you.
So,
What
So-
would you, sorry, can I ask?
yeah, go on.
What would you have done differently to monetize your open source project better?
No, good question. Very good question. Actually, I didn't mention I have a Israel company who copied me, and then they also were in YC when they were actually copying me, and now they are hiring still like 30 people. And what I did, which I would change, is at some point I thought that monetization was much different than the open source project. Yeah, like there were people, like I had this great idea, and that was the bad thing, that I will extend it to the, I'll need to explain it a little bit more technically, but basically I tried to create a second project as a monetization. And I would mostly likely keep the current one, which is actually working. I see people like it. I may add this feature specifically and ask for money about this specific feature. Then try to build another project on top of it. Yeah. So, and it's quite often it may happen because you may feel that it doesn't make sense to add it to open source. I will build that because people already like me. But it doesn't always work. Yeah. It often actually doesn't work because they like the open source and they don't care about the second project you are creating. Yeah. So that's one thing I would say.
What license do you use?
I think MIT, just normal. I think a lot of startups currently change the license, specifically like this Elastic, etc. I mean, I didn't care too much at that point, and I was using just MIT. Probably on the start, you can always change the license, yeah. For example, one of the big projects we changed the license was Airbyte. They get some kind of people not happy, obviously, about this, but usually the startups are okay after that. Yeah, so
there was this big dispute between GNU and MIT license. So where MIT was very liberal, the GNU was very viral. So like if the open source software is released on GNU,
mm-hmm.
you know, and it is not allowed to close the code.
Yeah, most
And
likely.
there was like in back in 1990s the disputes about this.
Yeah, most likely, like you don't want to do this license because I mean Linux obviously is using this license, but when you have your own code like that, you'll know that any company will be afraid to add it to their code base because they will be thinking if they because there is like if you add it, you actually need to open source the whole thing. Sometimes it's a legal dispute if it's actually like when etc. But it's risky then for companies to actually include it. So I wouldn't do it normally.
So for the context of licensing, I would like to ask you things. At first, you could dual license your own code, so you could put your code available under multiple license. For GPL, which you mentioned as GNU, but it's GPL,
Yeah.
I suggest to take a look on LGPL, lesser GPL, which is much more friendly, and it means that, okay, if you just call this code, you don't need to open your code base, but if you build on top, so something like the company from Israel that you told, then they need to open their code. So this is some sort of protection. And yes, there are some open source companies that publish code under the LGPL or GPL and provide paid license with less restriction in the context.
Okay.
Asking about how to monitor the license.
Yeah, okay.
So
I mean,
this or consulting. Consulting is the second thing that you could observe on the market. And the third, for example, the Pydantic people do this, what you told about build another tool on top of your open source library.
yeah, like you mean generally for open source monetization, yeah. But I mean, Elastic is using their own license, like specifically like forbidding kind of making money on what they build. So there are a couple like companies now do.
There are business
Others.
sources,
Yeah.
open source. Not
Yeah, I know. That's currently it's not really. It's just source available. I think that's some name for that. Yeah. So.
I might after explain why they need to do their own license. This is specific case. Or I may.
Are you working there? Or?
No, the general problem is that if you take a look on GPL or other licenses, it's told that you need to provide a code if you sell a product, sell a binary to someone else. And in the context of things like Elastic, other databases, the problem is that companies start selling API. So they don't provide your binary with database, they sell you access by API to database, and in such situation, you don't need to provide you might close the GPL code and don't need to provide this GPL code to anyone. So this is the reason why you're starting developing new licenses to prevent situation when someone brings your code, close after they pay the API and build on top of your work and earn on it.
Got it. I think mostly.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Maybe the last question.
Yeah.
So from your experience, do you think data engineers make good customers, or would you not do this again if you had the chance to repeat?
Yeah, probably they are not great customers, I would say. I mean, it's just like the data engineers are not customers, like the companies which they hire obviously are the customers. And I mean, some of these companies are good, especially US companies, etc. But it's still like actually the proper money you can make on the big enterprises using your tool, and that's at least for me that was hard to do. So yeah. Oh, there is another one. Should I answer?
Okay, the last one.
I see that there is a danger because we as a programmers are very bored easily. How to keep interest in your own library when you have a traction, you work very hard on it, but then you know that not gonna monetize, but people are using. Do you still spend time to fix the bugs, or you find some contributors, or you just forget about it? And
I mean, you mean you ask now specifically? I mean, I currently don't. I actually find a person to kind of maintain it, but he's not maintaining it very actively, I would say. So yeah. Generally, if you didn't manage to make it a product, and that's what's your like first intention, the project may slowly be starts to not be maintained very well, etc. Yeah, so there are still people using. Some obviously will fork the code, and because it's still better than writing their own thing. So they will maintain it, but yeah, generally, if the product doesn't work, usually the open source is starting to be a little bit stale.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last question from my side. Who won the code for JetBrains?
What? Code?
The best question wins the code.
Ah,
for
the best
JetBrains
question.
product, so who won?
Oh fuck, I don't remember. Who wants it? You want it?